When you begin to truly know your worth, life changes in ways that most people never dare to imagine. The reason is simple. The majority of people walk through life negotiating against themselves before the world even has a chance to. They shrink, they soften, they compromise, and they bend just to avoid conflict or rejection. But what happens when you no longer agree to play that game? What happens when you look at yourself in the mirror and finally say, "I will not settle for less than I deserve"? You begin to transform into someone who leads life rather than someone who merely reacts to it. You see, every time you lower your standards for approval, you give away a piece of your dignity. Every time you accept less love, less respect, less opportunity than you know you're capable of, you teach the world that it can take from you without giving much back. And people, whether consciously or unconsciously, will always take what you allow them to. That is not cruelty. It is simply how human beings operate. If you don't know your worth, you can't expect anyone else to recognize it for you. This is why the responsibility falls on you, and only you, to define your value and live by it with conviction. But knowing your worth doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean inflating yourself with false confidence or pretending to be something you're not. It means looking at the truth of who you are and standing firmly on that ground. It means acknowledging your strengths, but also your weaknesses, and realizing that both contribute to your value as a human being. And once you see this clearly, settling becomes impossible, because settling is an insult to the very essence of who you are. The world will test you. Life will throw at you countless situations where taking the easy road of compromise seems safer than standing tall. Maybe it's in relationships, where loneliness whispers in your ear and tempts you to accept less than real love. Maybe it's in your career, where you're offered comfort and security in exchange for burying your ambition and silencing your voice. Or maybe it's within yourself, where fear and doubt try to convince you that you're not capable of more. In every one of these moments, you will face the choice to settle or to stand, and each choice writes the story of your life. When you refuse to settle, you invite struggle, but it is the kind of struggle that builds you. It is the kind of fight that sharpens your character and expands your vision of what's possible. Because settling may grant you temporary peace, but it robs you of long-term fulfillment. And isn't that what life is meant to be? A pursuit of what is meaningful rather than what is easy. This is why knowing your worth is the foundation of leading your life. Without it, you drift, you comply, and you live according to the expectations of others. With it, you anchor yourself in truth and steer your life toward a future that is worthy of you. It will not be comfortable, and it will not always be applauded, but it will be honest, and there is nothing more powerful than living honestly with yourself. So let me say this plainly: stop handing your life over in pieces to people and circumstances unworthy of your spirit. Stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never built for you. Stand up, declare your worth, and walk forward without apology. Because the moment you refuse to settle, you no longer just survive this world, you begin to lead your own. One of the most difficult but liberating things a person can ever learn is the ability to say no. It sounds simple, almost trivial, but in reality, it requires tremendous courage. From the time you are a child, you are conditioned to seek approval, to be agreeable, to keep the peace. You are taught that compliance makes you likable, that sacrifice makes you noble, and that resistance makes you difficult. And while there is some truth in cooperation and generosity, what happens when your constant yes comes at the expense of your own dignity, your own dreams, your own well-being? You wake up one day and realize you've been living someone else's life while quietly abandoning your own. The courage to say no is not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's not about being selfish or unkind. It's about recognizing that every yes is a commitment of your limited energy, time, and spirit. If you scatter those resources by giving them away indiscriminately, what will be left for the things that truly matter to you? What will be left for the responsibilities that demand the best of you? Saying no is not rejection, it is protection. It is the shield you raise to guard what is sacred in your life, and it is the sword you use to carve out a path that belongs uniquely to you. But here's the challenge: people will resist your no. They will guilt you, question you, even shame you. Why? Because your boundaries disrupt the comfort of their expectations. They have grown used to your compliance, and your sudden refusal feels like betrayal. And yet, this is the very reason you must persist. If your worth is tied to your endless willingness to say yes, then it was never respect in the first place. It was dependency. Respect is only born when you have the strength to draw a line and hold it firmly, even if it costs you approval. Every time you say no to what is unworthy of you, you simultaneously say yes to something greater. You say yes to your peace of mind, yes to your integrity, yes to your potential. You make space for pursuits that enrich you rather than drain you, and though at first this feels uncomfortable, even frightening, it is through this discomfort that your confidence begins to grow. It is through the discipline of refusal that you discover the power of choice. Consider the alternative. Imagine a life where you never say no. You take on responsibilities that aren't yours. You tolerate relationships that diminish you. You accept conditions that suppress your voice. On the outside, you may appear agreeable, cooperative, perhaps even admirable. But inside, resentment festers, exhaustion builds, and your spirit begins to collapse under the weight of obligations you never truly wanted. That is not harmony. It is quiet despair. Saying no is the act of reclaiming your authority over your own existence. It is the declaration that you are not here to live as a servant to every demand, but as a steward of your own purpose. And it is precisely this courage that separates those who drift aimlessly from those who lead intentionally. Yes, there will be losses. Some people will walk away. Some opportunities will close. But what remains will be solid, real, and aligned with the person you are becoming. So understand this. The word no, when spoken with clarity and conviction, is not an end. It is a beginning. It is the beginning of self-respect, the beginning of strength, and the beginning of a life directed not by fear of rejection, but by commitment to what is meaningful. And if you are to stand up for yourself and truly lead your life, then let your no carry the weight of truth, for in that moment you will discover the freedom that comes only from choosing your own path. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define who you are and how the world interacts with you. Without them, you are like a house with no walls anyone can walk in, rearrange the furniture, and leave you to deal with the mess. Too many people live like this, wide open and unprotected, thinking that by allowing everyone access, they are being kind, accommodating, or selfless. But the truth is, without boundaries, you lose yourself. You stop being a person with agency and become a resource for others to consume. And eventually, you will feel hollow because your life no longer feels like your own. Establishing boundaries begins with self-respect. You have to decide that your time, your energy, and your emotional space are worth protecting. If you don't believe that, no one else will. And protecting those boundaries is not about building impenetrable walls or living in isolation. It's about creating structure. It's about saying, this is where I end and where you begin. This is what I will allow, and this is what I will not. That clarity is not cruelty. In fact, it's the opposite. It is honesty. It prevents confusion, manipulation, and resentment from poisoning your relationships. But boundaries come with a cost. The moment you enforce them, people will test them. Some will push back because they've grown accustomed to your availability, your compliance, your willingness to always bend. When you stop bending, they feel threatened. And here lies the difficult truth. Enforcing your boundaries will often reveal who truly respects you and who only valued you for what they could extract. That is not an easy lesson, but it is an essential one. Because a life without boundaries is a life without respect, and respect is the foundation of every meaningful connection. Think about it this way: when you say yes to everything, you dilute yourself. Your time becomes scattered, your energy fragmented, your purpose blurred. But when you draw lines, firm, non-negotiable lines, you concentrate your life around what truly matters. You gain clarity. You create room for growth, for depth, for authenticity. And in that space, your relationships become healthier, your work more purposeful, and your inner life stronger. Of course, setting boundaries is not just about other people, it is also about you. How often do you let yourself cross your own boundaries? How often do you betray yourself by tolerating what you know you shouldn't, by making excuses, by pretending that it doesn't hurt you when it does? Self-betrayal is perhaps the most dangerous violation of all, because it erodes your confidence in your own word. When you promise yourself that you'll stop tolerating disrespect, and then you continue to allow it, you weaken the bond of trust you have with yourself. And without that trust, you cannot lead your life with strength. So the work is twofold. Establish your boundaries with clarity and protect them with courage. You do this not because you want to shut people out, but because you want to let the right people in. The people who respect your boundaries are the ones who will respect you. The people who honor your space are the ones who truly value your presence. And the people who walk away when you stand firm are simply revealing what was hidden all along. Life will constantly present you with opportunities to either uphold your boundaries or compromise them. Each choice will either strengthen or weaken your sense of self. And over time, those choices will define the quality of your life. So stand firm. Be willing to endure the discomfort of disappointing others in order to live in alignment with your own truth. Because at the end of the day, your boundaries are not just lines. They are declarations of your worth, and they are the framework upon which you will build a life of respect, freedom, and strength. One of the most subtle traps that keeps people from leading their own lives is the constant hunger for external validation. It is a craving that can be as addictive as any drug, the need to be liked, to be approved of, to be praised. And for a while, it feels good. A compliment lands, and applause comes, someone's approval lifts you, and you feel as though you are on solid ground. But the danger is that this ground is not your own. It belongs to someone else. And when the applause fades, when the praise quiets, when the approval is withheld, you are left hollow, doubting who you are, because your sense of worth was built on something fragile, something outside yourself. Living this way turns your life into a performance. Every word you speak, every decision you make, every dream you chase or abandon is filtered through the question, what will they think of me? That question is a cage. It keeps you small, hesitant, afraid of taking risks that might draw criticism, afraid of standing out, afraid of being misunderstood. And in that cage you may avoid rejection, but you also avoid freedom. You avoid the authenticity that makes life meaningful. Detaching from external validation doesn't mean you become cold, indifferent, or dismissive of others. It doesn't mean you stop caring about the people you love or the responsibilities you carry. It means you stop outsourcing your identity. It means you anchor your worth in something deeper, something unshakable. Your values, your principles, your truth. Because if you can only feel good about yourself when others are clapping, then your entire life will be at the mercy of their moods, their preferences, their judgments. And that is no way to live. The irony is that the more you chase validation, the less of it you receive in a way that truly matters. People sense desperation. They can tell when you are bending yourself into shapes to win approval. It feels inauthentic, and inauthenticity never commands real respect. But when you stop chasing, when you begin to act from a place of conviction, when you live in alignment with your own standards, then people begin to notice. The respect that flows from authenticity is infinitely greater than the shallow approval that comes from conformity. But make no mistake, this detachment requires courage. It means accepting that some people will dislike you. Some will criticize you. Some will misunderstand you, and you may never get the chance to explain yourself. And that's fine. That's part of the cost of being real. You are not here to be universally adored. You are here to live a life that reflects who you truly are. And the paradox is that, when you let go of the need to be validated, you often find yourself more deeply respected than you ever were before. Consider the alternative. Imagine living your whole life tailoring yourself to fit the expectations of others, only to realize at the end that you never once lived according to your own truth. That is a tragedy, and it is a tragedy you can avoid if you begin now to anchor your worth within yourself. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped caring so much about who approves and who doesn't? What dreams would you chase? What risks would you take? What truths would you speak? The answer to those questions is the life you are meant to live. And you will never step into it fully until you release the need to be validated from the outside and begin to validate yourself from within. Because at the end of the day, freedom is not found in applause, it is found in authenticity. And the moment you stop living for approval is the moment you start living for truth. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must confront a difficult truth. No one else is coming to save you. No one else can live your life for you. And no one else can carry the weight of your decisions. You are where you are today, not simply because of luck or circumstance, but because of the choices you have made, both large and small, over years of living. That realization can be frightening, because it strips away excuses, but it is also the most empowering realization you can ever have, because it places the power to change directly into your hands. When people refuse to take responsibility for their choices, they give away their strength. They blame their parents, their bosses, their partners, the economy, or fate itself. And while there may be truth in the fact that life is unfair, that you have been wronged, or that circumstances have stacked against you, none of that changes the reality of what lies ahead. You can sit in bitterness pointing to everything that was unjust, or you can decide to rise, to act, and to carve a new path. Responsibility is not about denying your suffering. It is about refusing to let that suffering be the end of your story. Taking responsibility means understanding that every decision carries consequences. The way you treat your body, the words you speak, the people you surround yourself with, the work you dedicate yourself to, all of it adds up. And over time, those choices build the architecture of your life. If the structure is weak, it collapses under pressure. If the structure is strong, it stands through storms. You are the architect, whether you admit it or not. And every day you delay taking responsibility, you allow someone or something else to design the blueprint for you. This is why responsibility is inseparable from freedom. People think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But that is not freedom. That is chaos. Real freedom comes when you discipline yourself, when you take ownership of your actions and their outcomes. Then, and only then, can you move forward without being shackled by regret or resentment. Responsibility is the weight that gives your life substance. Without it, you drift. With it, you stand firm, of course. Responsibility is not easy. It will demand that you stop blaming and start building. It will require that you confront the parts of yourself that you would rather avoid: the laziness, the fear, the envy, the excuses. And yet, that confrontation is where growth begins. Because when you take responsibility for your choices, you no longer wait for the world to change in your favor. You become the agent of change in your own life. Think of the alternative. Imagine carrying on with the same patterns of avoidance, the same excuses, the same blame, shifting year after year. Imagine reaching the end of your life realizing that nothing changed because you never accepted that it was your responsibility to change it. That is a regret far heavier than the discomfort of accountability, and you can avoid it by starting now, by saying, "This is my life, and I will bear the weight of it." There is dignity in responsibility. There is strength in admitting that your choices have led you here, because it means your choices can also lead you somewhere else. No matter how deep the hole, no matter how heavy the burden, you have the capacity to act differently today than you did yesterday. And that simple truth is what transforms despair into hope. So stop waiting for someone else to carry the weight that was always yours. Stop handing over the pen that writes your story. Stand up, accept the responsibility that comes with your freedom, and act with intention. Because when you take responsibility for your choices, you reclaim your power, and with that power, you can lead your life toward the future it was always meant to have. At some point, you have to ask yourself what all of this is for. The standing up for yourself, the courage to say no, the drawing of boundaries, the breaking free from validation, the weight of responsibility. What is the point of it all if not to live a life that is both purposeful and authentic? Too many people go through the motions, chasing goals that were never truly theirs, fulfilling roles handed to them by society, by family, by peers. They wake up one day with the sinking realization that they have spent years climbing a ladder only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. That is the tragedy of a life lived without purpose, without authenticity. It is existence, yes, but not life in the fullest sense of the word. Purpose is not simply a lofty dream or an abstract idea. It is the reason you get out of bed in the morning. It is the conviction that what you are doing matters, even if no one applauds, even if no one notices. Purpose fuels endurance. It carries you through the long nights, the setbacks, the disappointments, because it anchors you in something greater than temporary comfort. Without purpose, every difficulty feels unbearable. With purpose, the same difficulties become meaningful, even necessary, because they are part of a story worth living. But purpose alone is not enough. It must be paired with authenticity. Authenticity means living in alignment with your deepest values, not in constant compromise to fit into molds that were never made for you. It means speaking the truth even when your voice shakes, making choices that honor who you are rather than who others want you to be. And authenticity is not a mask you wear. It is the act of taking off every mask you've been taught to put on. That kind of honesty is terrifying because it exposes you. It leaves you vulnerable to criticism, rejection, misunderstanding. Yet it is only in that vulnerability that you find real connection and real strength. The combination of purpose and authenticity creates a life of integrity. And integrity is what allows you to lead yourself first, and by extension, to influence and inspire others. People are drawn to those who live this way because it is rare, and it is rare because it is hard. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires the courage to walk alone for stretches of time, while others settle into the safety of the crowd. But that is the cost of living fully awake, and it is a cost worth paying. When you begin to live with purpose and authenticity, something extraordinary happens. You stop being ruled by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of disappointment lose their grip, because you are no longer living for appearances. You are living for something deeper, something that cannot be taken away by the shifting opinions of others. And from that place, your life becomes not just a series of days strung together, but a testament to what it means to stand up and truly live. So do not waste your years hiding behind masks, chasing applause, or surrendering to comfort. Do not trade your authenticity for acceptance or your purpose for convenience. The world does not need another copy of someone else. It needs you in all your truth and conviction. Decide what you stand for. Decide what gives your life meaning, and then live it fully without apology. Because in the end, there is no greater victory than to look back and know that you did not simply exist, you lived with purpose. You lived with authenticity, and you led your life as it was meant to be lived. At the heart of it all, standing up for yourself and leading your life is not about defiance for the sake of defiance, nor about isolating yourself from others. It is about reclaiming the power that was always yours. It begins when you recognize your worth and refuse to settle for less than what you know you deserve. It grows when you find the courage to say no, when you protect your boundaries, when you stop chasing approval and root your identity in truth. It matures when you accept full responsibility for your choices, refusing to live as a victim of circumstance. And it finds its highest expression when you live with purpose and authenticity, creating a life that is uniquely your own. This is not an easy path. It is demanding, it is uncomfortable, and it will often feel like you are swimming against the current. But it is the only path that leads to real freedom, to dignity, to strength. And the reward is not only that you build a life worth living, but that you become someone others look to as an example of courage and integrity. So stand tall, speak your truth, guard your boundaries, live your purpose, because in the end, no one else can lead your life for you, and no one else should. The responsibility and the privilege is yours.